Welcome to the Horse Girl Gazetteer. Join Georgia and Kate as we dive into this week's conversation. From health and fitness to communication and understanding, we are determined to develop our maps and help you to develop yours.
Hello. Today we have a very special guest who is one of my students and has been a student at Hideaway for how many years? I think you were.
I did warn you.
We were warned.
I didn't go to say nothing.
All right. Well, you're 13 now.
Yeah.
And you were
9.
Were you 9?
I was 9.
When you started with us, and you'd been riding a little bit before then.
Yeah.
So that's 4 years?
It'll be 5.
5 years?
2019.
Awesome. So we've invited you on our podcast to share your story of riding and talk about some of your experience as a young equestrian. And the idea behind this podcast is the idea that there's like a lot of information out there for people who love horses, and we all have access to so much on the internet, and it can be hard to kind of sort your way through all that information. And as you go through life, you keep kind of gathering more. So I picture it in my head like I'm traveling through kind of a map, and I've spent time in different areas of horse knowledge over my life. And sometimes I circle back and revisit places I've been before, either to like re-understand stuff I've already learned or to gain new information or a different perspective on something I've already done. Which is kind of the idea that our learning as horse people is not really linear. And the journey it can be kind of a wander through different things. It doesn't always take us where we expect to go. And so we've created this podcast to talk about some of the things that we've encountered and what other people have encountered in different parts of their kind of journey with horses. So to start out, could you tell us kind of about your horse journey? Like, what inspired you to start riding? What are some of the stops kind of along the way as you've learned about horses, and I suspect about yourself as you've been riding?
I think I first started getting into horses when I would see them on the side of the road, like just driving somewhere. And I would yell like, "Oh, horse!" And so when I turned 5, my parents decided that for my birthday, they would get me my first riding lessons. It was on like a 16-hand, I don't know what she was, but massive beast of a horse that was a very, very good, had a very good soul. And then that farm shut down. So I moved and I did saddle seat for a while. And I think I've learned a lot since doing saddle seat about like actually the horse and not just me as a rider.
Yeah.
But I think it was a good confidence builder because the horses were ridden so much. They were just so used to it.
Yeah. And
I never really had to worry about them doing something naughty, which is a positive and a negative at the same time. So yeah, that was big. And then my mom really wanted me to get more experience actually doing tacking up and other things rather than just going riding, getting off, leaving.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I got to Hideaway, I hated it because it was dirty. We got in the car and I told my mom, I was like, I don't want to go to that place. It's dirty there.
And what did your mom say?
She said, "Well, we can look at it." And I was also accidentally placed at the advanced class as a beginner who didn't even know how to hold my reins properly. I switched between Merlin and Hope, which I couldn't decide whether I sort of kind of was okay with that or hated it.
That you moved horses a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it was really good because it helped me build my confidence and my just being able to move a horse when it's my idea, I guess, instead of having a horse just do the thing. And I remember the first time I rode a horse that I somewhat enjoyed but hated at the time was one time in this big group lesson of me sort of doing a private lesson because I couldn't do what everyone else was doing. And someone didn't show up, and so I got to ride Puck. And he was better than the tiny little demons. They are sometimes. And I remember like really hating him at first. And then you made me ride him more. And then I sort of kind of liked him. And
I have to pause here and say that Puck passed away probably 3 years ago, I think. And he was my best lesson horse for quite some time. And Hadley still has a necklace that she wears most days that says Puck with an infinity symbol. So, I think it's an important part of the story.
Yeah. I think that there was a big change during COVID because
Yes.
you started the Wednesday program.
Mhm.
And so it was like learning to work with like a lot of people who are having a similar experience than me, but like started from completely different places.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain what the Wednesday program is a little
So
bit?
yeah, so it was on Wednesdays, we had virtual days for school. And so we'd all come and we'd like do barn chores. There was like a time for a Zoom call in the morning, and then we'd do barn chores, and at the end of the day we'd get to ride. And it was like started off as 7 kids, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It was super cool, super fun. I learned a lot about actually being around horses.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I knew how to muck a stall before that. And it was super cool to be able to just like witness what actually goes down instead of just like showing up for a lesson. And over time it like slimmed down to 3. And I'm so close with those people today, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
That was just like sort of a thing that it was like a weekly thing. We'd like go to the barn on Wednesday, just like kind of chill.
Yeah.
When you guys ended up moving to this farm now, it was like a slightly long stretch for like some of those people.
Yeah.
But it was like super cool to see like the farm evolving, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, my parents helped out a lot. So like I was around here
Yeah.
a lot, and I spent most of my days like working with Charlie. I would
Yeah.
just like sit in there and muck his stall every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Every time he'd poop, I'd grab the pitchfork and like take out the poop. I'd just sit there and watch Charlie. I vlogged it all on my Snapchat. Charlie's owners said he could have hay for the second time. So I gave him hay. And I think that was super cool. And after Puck passed away, I started writing Hope. And she was different in a good way, and also a slightly bad way sometimes. It's just like a lot for me to have like a horse who just kind of, if you told him to, he would, to like a horse that you really had to, well, do the thing now.
Really clear.
Yeah.
With Hope. Yeah.
Which was really good for me in the long run. And then there was like some sort of a plan to like figure out like a lease thing, and she got EPM, and so we started looking for horses, and that was like 3 or 4 month thing. And I guess it was cool for me to be able to see like different barns. Like along the way we'd go to look at a horse, and like the way they did things was like completely different and super cool to see, like because I hadn't really seen how other people ride just in day to day. And so I think that was super cool. We ended up getting a pony from Kate, her little paint pony named Annie, who is like also slightly awful sometimes. Like great when she's great and awful when she's awful.
This is the truth.
And she, like 2 weeks after we got her, just would like be a naughty pony. There was lots of, oh God, did I pick the wrong one? She has a door thing.
She does have a door thing.
She drops her right shoulder, and out the door she goes. And when she's halfway out the door, you can't stop the door. It's just, well, now it's happening because I actually learned how to use my aids. I like aids. And it's made a difference in the long run. Like, because now I'm able to ride horses who are crooked or something, and I can put my leg on and it fixes it, sort of.
Yeah.
And so it's super cool to have like 2 separate problems that are completely different, but on a horse that I've never ridden, I'm able to like put my leg on and well, there's the problem gone.
Yeah.
And I messed around with her for like a year. She got EPM, and we spent winter of groundwork, which was super beneficial. I like got closer to her. We built like trust, and we did just a lot of in-hand stuff. It was definitely like not the greatest for my confidence though, because it just sort of felt like, well, I can't do it now. Yeah. Like, it was just like, it felt so repetitive, and like I was just never going to get back on the horse, which was not great. And then spring hit, and boom, different horse, because wow, it's now not winter. And she had a right front.
Yep.
So she went lame.
Well, you rode her for a while.
Yeah, we rode her.
You were doing a little bit of jumping. And then she ended up with a right front. She started bolting again.
Yeah.
Right? Because she had you guys had worked that out.
Yeah.
And we're kind of rocking and rolling. And then she started bolting again.
Yeah.
Which was a sign.
It was a sign.
It was a sign that something wasn't quite right again. So we went into did some diagnostics and did some shoeing on the right front.
Yes.
And then it got better.
It was cool. We did. She was still like the naughty pony, but it was a different sort of naughty. It was like, well, now there's like a sort of a conversation that can happen where it's like, well, I tell you no, and so you don't do the thing. Like, you just don't bust through my aid, which is cool. I was up here so much last summer, so I got to work with her a lot, which was super cool. I got to ride with some cool people.
Yeah.
We took her out for the first time after I got her. We like chased her around the arena for like 2 hours because she pulled her lunge line out of my hand and went outside.
Well, we were trying to prepare her to take her off property, so we were doing a kind of a check-in, and she absolutely left the arena. So we spent a very long time trying to see if we could get on the same page with her, which was moderately successful.
Yeah. I think.
And then we decided to take her anyways and see what happened and know that we could stop if it was.
She was 100% perfect.
She was.
We've learned that she's always better off property than on property, but I think she was also very tired.
I don't know. I don't know that she was tired.
I think that was like a super cool learning curve. It's because I hadn't ridden her outside of home. And so riding with someone else outside of home in a new space and being okay was definitely good. Yeah. She was kind of on and off through the winter. She was like slightly just weird about like her naughty habits like slightly like amped up again, which I don't know still if it was like because it was getting colder or like something was going on. So she was kind of on and off throughout the winter, and then we had like a bunch of abscess stuff, which was cool because I had never had to I had never taken care of an abscess before. So I think it's a huge learning curve, definitely. And then I got back on in the spring. We did some stuff. Her like door thing completely went away. Like it was like sometimes she'd be like, well, what if we, and I was like, no. And she was like, okay, that's cool. We don't have to do that. We had like maybe a month and a half of that. Good behavior. And it was like it was still cold out. Yeah. So it wasn't like. It
wasn't weather related.
Yeah. And then the behavior came back.
I don't think she started bolting again. She started stopping.
No, she started stopping. It was like one day in particular where she just like wouldn't give me a yes or like an okay. It was like a constant no. And I think like, well, she'd been so good, so why now? And then it just kind of didn't get better. So we took her to the vet and we got her SI injected because we did a thermal scan and her SIs were very, very hot. Mm-hmm. They should not be hot.
We did a bone scan. Which also said maybe SI. And didn't say anything else significant.
Which is good. We are still sort of in recovery from SI, which is cool. But I built a lot with her since then, which is cool. Lots of like in-hand stuff. She's able to like really relax and like loosen. Like she's not so tense just walking now, which is cool. And I've learned a lot since we've added new people, do like lots of bodywork stuff, which is super cool. Like, when is the no an actual no, or when is it a behavior thing?
Yeah.
And you should just keep going.
Yeah.
Which is super cool, I think. And I think it's like also transferred again in my ability to ride other horses,
Yes.
which is super cool. And I'm like a pretty anxious person in general. So I think having the ability to feel like I can is nice.
Mhm.
Because like sometimes with a pony, I feel like I can't, and I hate that feeling.
Yes.
Like it's like, well, she won't listen at all, and there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
Which is not fun. Like it feels like you have no control and she's everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is not ideal.
The worst.
It's the worst. It feels absolutely terrible, awful, no good.
Yeah.
And so I think it's been cool seeing that transfer onto other horses. And just like, I think about it and it's like, if I hadn't ridden this horse, I wouldn't be able to do this. And so I may not have this one. And it's kind of all like a big chain.
Yeah.
And like, because if you get rid of one part, then they don't connect.
Yes.
It's like two separate things.
Yeah.
Which is super cool because like, I may not have ended up with the one I have now if I didn't ride Puck,
Right.
you know, or
All
Hope,
connected.
you know, which is super cool, I think.
Yeah. I think that's such a thoughtful way to think about it, because I know that your vision would be that you would like to event her.
Mhm.
And the pony has evented with other people. So I think it would be reasonable to be somewhat frustrated that that's like not what you're doing right now. So to be able to see that all the time that you've put in with her and all the things that you've learned with her are part of that chain that you're talking about, and are part of like your journey wasn't just like ride horse, go eventing.
Right.
It's like not the path that we've taken. But because you have this pony who's like really tricky, and for a lot of reasons that you said, it's hard to navigate. It's like reading her is sometimes challenging.
Right.
Right? And so you've learned to have so much more subtlety in understanding and interpreting her behavior than you would with a pony who just said yes all the time.
Right.
Right? Because she says no in a lot of different ways and for a lot of different reasons. And so you have kind of built a bigger vocabulary with her as far as what you can read and understand, and then, make your training choices based on that, that is a very cool, that's a part of the map that I don't know that everyone spends a lot of time in. And it maybe was not totally our choice that's where we spend a lot of time, is in what does this no mean? But I think it's so important. And I think it's really cool that you can see that in the other horses. Mm-hmm. And that you're able to transfer that understanding to what horses that are really challenging in other ways. It's very neat. It's all a big circle.
Yeah. And I know you and I have commiserated about growing up with a pony and shared some experiences, because my pony thankfully did not have really anything physical wrong. He was just a twerp. And I know that we've like chatted about that, but I really like it's really nice to hear you, like Kate said, talk about it in such a positive way, because I am definitely the rider that I am today because of the fact that when my pony thought I was being stupid, he'd put me on the ground and be like, we're not doing that. You're off of me. I'm going to run away now. Bye. And it, like, not to sound like a boomer about it, but it builds character. It really does.
It does.
It really does build character to work through it. What are some of your favorite memories with Annie?
Well, so there's some good ones and like some also like, well, that was stupid and also super funny. There was one time where I was just like sitting with her one day and I was like, it would be cool if I could get on from the ground. So I just started jumping and hoping that like on one of those jumps I'd like end up on top of her.
Did it work?
It did. It took
a jump.
It took like
Amazing.
10 minutes. Last year we were riding in the jump field and I was like I was trotting. And I was just trotting in a circle. She was being really good. And then I went to trot over a pole. And she jumped the pole. And I went flying. And then Kate turned around. And I was on the ground.
Yep.
That
happened.
Yeah. Ponies and poles. Maverick, the first pole set of any season it didn't matter how many you put out, if it was 1 or if it was 10, he would attempt to launch himself over all of them. He had to be reminded every single year that ground poles were for trotting over, not for jumping. Yeah. Maybe it just looks bigger from their height. I don't know.
I know another pony who did the same thing, yes. Well, it's as an instructor, one of the things I have in my head is trying to give students an opportunity to be challenged and gain confidence by doing hard things, but not be so overfaced that they lose confidence. So one of the things you said at the very beginning that was awesome about riding in the saddle seat barn is that like horses kind of went on the rail. They went walk, trot, canter. They went the other way. They went walk, trot, canter. You got off. And there wasn't a lot of this like negotiation or interpretation or kind of conversation with the horses. And I think that's really interesting because that certainly, like you said, has a lot of benefits of being able to like get the feel of what it should feel like before you're in a situation where, Annie, because she's had all of these various reasons to say no thank you or no period, it doesn't always feel like you're trying to learn what the feeling is, but she's not doing the feeling, and maybe she can't, or for some reason doesn't want to. So that can be kind of a challenge in the learning process. You've gotten to ride some other horses when Annie's been either emotionally or physically offline, and so you've gone to ride Sparky. I think some.
Yeah.
My horse Brennan, and started riding Ginny this week, actually.
Very exciting.
Very exciting.
Very exciting. So do you have any other thoughts about kind of this? You have the benefit of being in a lesson program situation where we have other horses for you to ride. Do you have thoughts about having that opportunity to ride different horses as far as?
I really like that in our lesson program, at least, we don't have like 20 horses. Like there's only so many. And so like, it's not like I'm riding a different one every time. Yeah. Which I like because like, I like being able to do something and then build off of that something in whatever way is possible. And I think it's like so cool to look at like different horses. Because I definitely had a fear of bigger horses. I was scared of Brennan at first because he's much bigger than what I had been working on. And I think it's cool to learn that like I actually can. When I was riding Sparky most, I was working on my canter work, which like on a tough pony isn't always the easiest if you don't really know what you're doing. Yeah. And I think that was super cool because he's so chill about it. Like he kind of just goes. Yeah. And that was super awesome. And then when I went back on Annie, it was super cool to see like how I could feel Sparky and Annie a little bit because they're different. And I think also something that's been cool is like my ability to lunge a horse because obviously like can't always ride, but sometimes they need to move. And so I remember when I first got Annie, I could not get her out on the circle. So I stood there with the lunge whip trying to get her to move out. And now she just goes on a circle, walk, trot, canter, very happily. And I remember one of the other boarders was sitting in there with us, and she was like trying to teach me. She was like, "You'll get it." And I was like, "Will I?" She will not move. It's like she's not going.
Your persistence paid off.
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but
yeah. Which I think is an important thing to note.
Yeah.
That there's so much progress in riding that does not feel like progress. It's a little bit like watching paint dry sometimes. You have to kind of trust the process.
It feels like sometimes you're like moving super far backwards and just like you haven't done something super cool. Like in reality, you're like moving like, just like I think about it as like there's this thing, there's like a line and you can't move backwards, but you can move sideways. And so like, you're always going forward, but you're going in like a different sort of sideways, whether it's like a squiggly line, straight line, like whatever, staircase, Yeah. And I think that's like a super cool visual for me at least because like I'm going somewhere. Yeah. Maybe it's like not towards where I wanted it to. Yeah. Like it ends up in the end goal, which is,
Well, this is exactly
changes.
The map idea.
Right.
Right. Is that you're not necessarily like if I want to get from here to, Lewiston, I'm not just going to get like walk out of this room and walk straight down the cliff, right? Like I'm going to go the opposite direction out the driveway first, right? And if I run into a road closed, I might have to take a detour. And Annie has experienced many detours. Right? Oh, Annie. We are learning so much.
I think another thing that was super cool is, like, I had the person who used to ride her,
Yeah.
the person who invented her, told me last year that, like, it looks super cool sometimes, but, like, it feels awful
Yeah.
sometimes, and, like, she's never easy.
Yeah.
Like, even though, like, it looks like I did all these cool things, like, there was also rides where, like, I just didn't, and,
Yeah.
like, we just did super, super, super basic stuff,
Yeah.
and, like, it was hard, and, like, you definitely she will not always be, like, the best, yay, you did it, you know?
So you are on social media.
Mhm.
You have an Instagram.
I do.
And so you can see all of these other people who are sharing their Instagram posts.
Mhm.
And do you think that having Annie gives you some insight into what might be going on behind the scenes a little bit, behind some of those Instagram
Yes.
posts?
Yeah. I think it's cool to be able to, like, look at some of them. Like, someone will post, like, a funny fail, and I'll be like, well, this is actually what's going on, and, like, the horse is telling you something, and
Yeah.
you're just, like, not listening.
Yeah.
And I think, like, can be super discouraging, definitely, to, like, watch, like, a 6-year-old jump, like, a meter after, like, riding for, like, 6 months.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, there's, like, so many different approaches, and, like, not everyone just, like, gets there. And I think being able to, like, actually,
Well, I think the
work with
likelihood
horses-
that that's the whole story is low.
right.
Right? Like, what else is, I mean, you could post pictures of, like, the really good days with Annie. And if that's all you posted on Instagram, there would be other people looking at you the same way, being like, oh man, she's just doing the thing. And they would
Right.
have no idea how many times we've cried over this pony, you know?
Well, even if you post, like, a bad thing, it doesn't really show, like, all that goes on. Like, you don't understand, like, what the person is actually going through with the
Yeah.
horse. And social media is, like, so fake and also sort of real at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool to see, like, oh, I feel the same way sometimes.
Right.
I get you.
Yeah.
Mine does the same thing.
Yes. I think that's the
Um,
best part about social media is when it's used that way. That's
Yeah.
like, wow, we're sharing a common experience of the human existence, but that's kind of a double-edged sword
Yeah.
because it can be discouraging to see other people who look like they're just doing the thing and it looks easy.
No.
It's probably not. It's probably not at all.
It's good that you have the awareness that it's not the whole story.
Thank you, Annie.
What else are ponies for, if not to teach you that it's hard?
What makes it worth all the hard?
When
for
you
you?
have, like, a super cool day and it's, like, all the things you've been working on for, like, the past, like, 6 months just, like, finally come together, and it's, like, boom, you see it finally.
Yeah.
Like, because sometimes it's hard to actually visualize it. Like, you're told these things and you do them, but, like, you're like, well, what does this actually end up doing? And then you just keep practicing it, and it actually turns into something really cool. And, like, now, like, the horse is on the bit, per se, or, like, she can actually move in a straight line, or, like, you know. And I think it was super cool to see, like, how she fluctuates, because, like, 1 month she'll be fine, and then, oh, well, now we're having, like, a problem. And then we figure out something to work through the problem. And then we find another problem. But then we work through it. Like, it's just, like, a constant, like, it never ends with, like, the problems. They'll go away, and then there will be a different one. Like, it's never, like, a straight road.
Yeah.
And so I think that was, like, definitely something that I didn't expect. I thought, like, maybe, well, if we get through this, then we'll be there. No. No. No.
And that's a little bit finding the fun in that.
Yeah.
That it ends up being kind of a puzzle. And I think you've gotten really good at seeing more subtlety, too, as you've worked with Annie. And noticing, because she is not stoic, I think. You know, I think there may be ponies in the world that are maybe not comfortable or not perfectly balanced and just are kind of like, oh, well, a little bit Eeyore. And Annie says, I'm not balanced, so I absolutely will do nothing. I could instead rear.
Which I sort of like, because, like, she'll
Mhm.
tell you exactly
Yes.
when. But, like, she's also so game to do something that's,
Yeah.
like, so comfortable for her.
Yeah.
Like, she just, like, you'll line her up to, like, a jump or something, and she'll just be like, yes, ma'am. Like,
Go.
come with me.
Hold on.
Let's do this. Which is, like, super cool and, like, super uplifting at the same time.
Yeah.
Just to, like, be able to have that, like, like, hand holding me, like, because, you know, it's sometimes, like, you get there and then, oh gosh, the horse refuses.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't have the confidence myself to be like, well, come on. We have to do the thing.
Yeah.
When she's feeling good, she'll tell you that she's feeling good, and you can like actually work through it, and it's super cool and super rewarding to see like your hard
She'll
work
take you.
actually coming through. And like you used a metaphor for a while that was like you have this toolbox, and like everything you're learning, you're adding tools to your toolbox, and like you might need a smaller wrench for this or like a screwdriver for that.
Yeah.
And like you have all these tools that you might need in different scenarios with different horses or like whatever is going on. And I think it was like super cool to see that and like just see it starting to pay off a little bit.
Is your toolbox heavy?
Yes.
We need to upgrade to the wheelie toolbox for Hadley. Gonna need a van here in a minute.
And I think it's also super cool to see like the kids who are starting to learn how to like canter, seeing them like learning, oh, that's hard.
Yeah.
Like you see people do the thing, but like sometimes it's like actually a lot harder than it looks.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool seeing like other people going through like a similar experience, but like different. Because each horse is so different in their own way. All of them are so weird.
Every single one.
They're so special. I think it's like super cool to see different riders learning different things. You know, because each person has their slightly different goal that they want to achieve. And I think it's super cool to being able to like audit your riding and then shows that like the little kids do. Yeah. And watching body work get done and like other boarders ride, which is super helpful. Yeah. I can see what you're talking about actually happening. Yeah. And be able to visualize it more because I'm definitely a visual learner. Yeah. More than like an audio learner. I like to see when the thing happens. Yeah. But I think I've also learned that like even the small things get like a yes. Yeah. Like it's like, oh, she releases her tension in her neck. That's a yes. Yeah. Which like I wouldn't have before. Yeah. And so I think that's super cool is being able to like break down the bigger picture. Because like you can only go so far away before. Yeah. And like really zooming in on the small stuff to make that bigger picture. Because it's like when you look at the bigger picture just from the start, you're missing so much stuff. Like it's like cracked and torn and when you like zoom in, you're able to like fix little cracks. And obviously it's never perfect. Like the picture can just keep expanding. Yeah. Like it's never going to be, oh, it's done now, you know? Yeah. I think it'll be super cool to see like whoever gets like the pony next, see what they can do. Yeah. Which is be super cool in the future.
The story will continue.
Because she's still really young. Yeah. Which is cool.
I think the other thing that's interesting that you mentioned is just time spent at the barn. Yes. I think that not everybody has the opportunity to be at the barn a lot. Or like when you sign up for riding lessons, you maybe just go to your lesson and leave. And I think that I had forgotten about that Wednesday program and how much progress you guys made being in that program compared to kids who just came once a week. And the amount of time you actually rode on Wednesday we would joke about it a little bit because it was tiny. It would be 3 of you with 1 horse and you guys had, your afternoon to get the horse, tack the horse up, groom the horse, and then you would lead each other or lunge each other or just kind of support each other riding together. So by the time it was all said and done, there was probably about 2.5 hours of tacking up and grooming, and you maybe each rode for 10 minutes, if I remember correctly, right? Yeah. You were pretty little, so, you guys weren't cantering around or anything. But I think with that extra maybe 10 minutes in the saddle, I would say that the speed of your progress probably doubled compared to your peers who were just coming to their 45-minute or hour-long lesson.
It was cool to see, like, the actual process of, like, other people, too. Like, I would never really see boarders besides, like, they're on the horse or, like, they have their horse in the arena. But it was cool to see, like, boarders, like, what they show to the barn, what they do. Yeah. Like, all they do for the horse. And I think it was cool, again, when you guys moved to be able to, like, see, like, the breakdown of what actually happens. Like, because, it's easy to think, like, oh, it's just, like, you get on the horse is great, you put the horse away, you get on another horse, the horse is great, you put but there's so much other stuff you have to do. There's just so much stuff. Right. It can be, like, almost overwhelming at some points. I think it was
managing
cool.
their food and the fencing. You watched us put up a lot of fencing.
I did.
And move a lot of rocks.
A lot of rocks. a lot of big machines.
Yep.
It was just really Charlie and
Yep.
goats.
You and Charlie and the goats for a couple months before you moved everybody.
Yeah. And I think it was cool to see, like, the super overgrown, like, no fence and put up, that farm turned into, like, this, like, so it's so welcoming, I think. Like, it's just, like, so homey. Like, it's not fancy in any way. Like, it's not like the barn's, like, always super clean. It's super fancy. Like, you have to really, like, wipe your feet off before you enter. And I think that is, like, really nice because it just feels so, like, welcoming. It's like, hey, we're here. We can give you a hug. Come here. And I think that was definitely super helpful. Like, everyone was so nice and just, like, you can talk to people.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoy, after I ride, just, like, talking to whoever's there.
Yeah.
And I think it's super cool. Like, you can share stories. Like, oh, your horse did that today. I've had that before. It really sucks. But you rode through it really well.
Yeah.
You should be proud of that.
Well, and you've done a really great job with some of our younger riders who are going through similar trials and tribulations and being able to be like, yup, I had that day. And being able to kind of support them through the same kinds of things that you've gone through. And I think one of the things that we're lucky to have at this farm in particular is a lot of different age riders at a lot of different levels. So we have, adults who are beginners who have less experience than you do that are able to support you because they're older and have kind of the wisdom and judgment of being adults. But then you have these skills that you can share with them about the horses, which is just such a fun collaboration. It's really neat. We're very lucky.
Yeah.
We are very lucky.
It's a nice farm.
It is.
So homey.
Yeah.
So
It's very
beautiful.
homey. I appreciate you reminding me about the Wednesday thing because I think that we should think more about how to reincorporate that up here.
Because I know last time you and I chatted, we were chatting about how one of the gifts I had growing up was the fact that I lived with my pony.
Yes.
And so I got to see him all the time.
Yeah.
And how huge that was. So
Yeah.
it does not surprise me that even though that day only had 10 minutes of riding, it, like, propelled you forward.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of confidence to be gained in just being near the horses.
Yeah.
Just, like, existing around them.
And there's not a lot of immediate gratification in that
No.
experience because it's what you learn by osmosis. And it's like, if you happen to be here on the day that the farrier's here, you'll learn about the feet.
Right.
And
Vice versa, too. Like, when the farrier's here and you're working your horse, he or she can see, like, what their work is actually doing to make the horse more sound.
Yeah.
Or, whatever it needs to do.
Exactly. Well, we interviewed Dash in one of our episodes and talked with him about how closely we collaborate with him. And he likes to watch the horses go so he can see what he's working on and how it's changing the movement. And we kind of go out of our way to have that part of the program. And especially with your pony.
I think it's super cool because, like, as it's some people, it's not their cup of tea to, like, be this involved in, like, not the riding. Because I think, especially here, we don't hyper focus on, like, oh, you're riding.
Yeah.
It's like there's all this other stuff that needs to happen before you can actually get on the horse.
Yeah.
And for some people, like, that's kind of their turn off, which I think is important to see. Like, if you were just, like, you have to have someone who's actually interested in being able to help out. Because most people, for their goal, is to, like, be able to get a horse in the future. And, like, there's so much other stuff than just, like, the lesson horses get ridden so much. Like, they're not going to have that many trials and tribulations as, like, maybe off the track thoroughbred who is, like, super fresh,
Yeah. It's going to be a totally different experience.
Right. And I think, like, sometimes it's hard to prepare for that.
Yeah.
Because, like, you can't just, like, go ride off the track thoroughbred all the time, Like, it's when you go into, like, actually looking for horses, it's, like, it's hard to immediately be like, well, this is what you need.
Well, and every horse, even if it's the horse that on paper or in the trial, I mean, when you tried Annie, when we decided that this would be the right pony for you, you got on her and put her on a loose rein and she trotted with her nose on the ground around the arena for you. And we were like, well, this is going to work. And 2 weeks later, she was like, actually, on second thought, I would like to challenge this child. And we were all like, Annie, really? Right? So apparently she had plans. But I think that's not an uncommon story. I think that's probably actually more normal than not. Is, you don't get to know a horse in an hour.
Right.
You can learn a lot, but your partnership with that horse is going to be totally different than everything that they've experienced before, and you have to navigate that together. And there's no way, we do our best to try to find a challenge that's going to be where you can support the horse and the horse can support you. And we do our best, but every single partnership is going to be, it's going to have its rocky times. And you're right, that's really hard to prepare for in a lesson setting. If you just are taking a riding lesson, you're not here hanging out.
Right.
While you have Kate and I guess, on the spot, do you have any burning questions that you'd like to lob this way? You don't have to, I was just curious.
What was the worst fall you've had?
The worst fall I've had?
Yeah.
I haven't had very many falls.
Okay, you better knock on the wood over there.
You knock on wood right now.
You're the one who's riding Ginny today, so I'm fine.
No. There you go.
I can tell you my funniest fall.
Yeah.
I really have not had any bad falls at all. But the funniest fall was off your pony when she tripped and I slid down her neck like it was a slide. And you know the picture in the book of like the shoulder, hip, heel line? Mm-hmm. I maintained that line perfectly from on the horse, in the saddle, straight down her neck to standing on the ground in front of her with the bridle under my butt and the pony like 3 feet behind me. I scooped the bridle off with my butt as I went off her head. Landed on my feet.
In a clinic with everyone watching.
In a clinic with everyone
Very
watching.
important detail.
So that was probably my best fall.
That's amazing.
I came off Annie one other time on a down bank over her shoulder because there's just not a lot of shoulder there.
The thing about ponies is that they don't have a whole lot in front of you.
There's not much in front of you on the pony, and I'm a little tall for her. And I don't love a down bank, which doesn't help. So I came off of her shoulder that way. I think the time I came off before then was, we came off of Ebony.
Ooh.
The time before that, she spun me off. Because she was doing running, and I was doing, what if we turned?
Okay, I have a question for you now.
Okay.
So talking about Ebony, what I can remember from that horse is that she was very hard, and she did very naughty things sometimes.
She did.
And looking back with your experience now, if you can remember, what do you think what was going on?
What else could we have done to help her?
Yes.
Well, this is a great question, right? Because it's like, if I'd known then what I know now, which is like the constant experience of riding, is that experience is what you get right after you need it. Right? Here. So what would we have done for Ebony differently?
Do you want to give a little bit of context for Ebony?
Yeah, Ebony is a pony that when I very first started teaching and doing riding and after school program stuff, she was available looking for a free lease. So she's a little Morgan mare. And so I brought her, and I think for the first week she screamed. And she is one of the loudest whinnies I've had the misfortune of experiencing, and she screamed for a week. So she did have EPM, ultimately. I think if we had caught that earlier, that might have helped some. I think I have a much deeper understanding of dressage now than I did then, because I've gone out of my way over the last year and a half to improve my education in that direction specifically, and just the development of the horse and their muscles. So I think I could have explained a lot more to her. So one part of riding is organizing yourself, and I think that gets you really far. And the horse training is much harder if you're not actually able to organize your own body. So what I have taught beginners over the years is mostly about organizing your body, but that doesn't actually train the horse. Besides, it gives them a positive experience of the balance of the rider. And, the more right and the more organized your body is, the more organized the horse will be. And so there is an element of training in that, and that if you ride the horse in a good balance always, they become more balanced. However, I think my understanding of how to kind of be strategic about developing the horse has really evolved. beyond just how do I sit in it in a really good balance. So that would probably be helpful. And then I think the third piece would be, we've done a lot of groundwork focused on posture and the interaction of posture with regulation. And I think that she was often fairly poorly regulated. And the goal in the dressage would be also to help the horse by organizing their body become more regulated. But I think we have a lot more skills, experience, knowledge now about how to do that from the ground as well, which would probably have helped her.
I think another cool thing that we got to do after moving here was like work with Lindsay Partridge, and her like calm connection stuff, which has been like super cool.
Yeah.
To see in action, especially like with Chance, who is probably had a hard past life.
Yeah.
We don't really know. He's a boarder, but who knows what happened? But like probably not something good. Some good interactions with like people, so like he holds that, and I think it was cool seeing her work with him and like getting him to like he kind of seems like the one who just kind of like lets it in into like maybe it can't anymore. It was kind of cool to see his emotions, like because he's good with you and his owner, but having someone new work with him, I think that was cool. And with Power too, who knows what was like what, but he just needed something in his life. And I think that was cool to see, like, her ability to channel their focus in a different way. Like, she uses the energy scale as, like, a 1 to a 10, and 10 being, like, explosive rearing, not happy, but 1 being, like, a little too slow, zoned out, and you want, like, a 4 to, like, a 6 range, everything in between those. And I think it was cool to see her bring his energy down from like an 8 or a 9 to like a 6. Yeah. Which, like doesn't happen. Just, you can't always just like be from like a horse who's like a 9 down to like a 1. That doesn't. Yeah. And I think it was cool and definitely a good experience to be able to see that you can like walk into an arena with a horse that's like a 8 or a 9 and bring them down to like something that's like a 4 or 5. Yeah. Just with like working with them and saying, hey, I'm here. We can let's
have a conversation.
Let's have a conversation about your feelings. Yeah. That is okay.
I think the way that she does that is she has a really incredible understanding of how horses communicate with each other and what their language and their body language is in the herd. The idea being that instead of trying to teach them to speak human, we actually learn how to speak horse, which makes their lives so much easier. And I think that's the technique, and that's what, and use all the calm connection exercises with Annie if she's feeling excited or anxious.
Hello, world.
Yes. But all of those exercises are just really concrete ways to say, hey, I speak horse. I got you. Like, I will be the leader of this herd. I'm going to watch out for the predators. You're good. We're good. And that, I think, is really regulating for the horses.
I'm curious as to your experience with Jules. Because, obviously, he was not the age that you expected.
No.
So, like, how has Lindsay stuff and Savannah stuff worked into, like, your ability to, like, process that with him?
It's been huge. One thing I was thinking about as you were talking about Lindsay was how I feel like you're growing up in a very different horse culture than, like, and I don't want to speak for you, but then I did at least. I very much was raised in a culture of you tell the horse what to do and the horse will do it. And if the horse doesn't do it, you will ask again and make it clear that you're not kidding. And like, it never like, I was never beating a horse over a fence or anything like that, but it was just like one thing I remember was don't let the horse turn away from the fence. It doesn't matter if the horse traipses through the fence. The horse is going over the fence in some way, shape, or form. And I would never do that to Jules at this point. Like, if he stopped in front of a fence, if we were at that point, I would be like, okay, we're going to look at it. We're going to take a deep breath, and then we're going to come back into it, regulated, instead of, like, forcing him through an uncomfortable situation. And with the Lindsay stuff, when I don't remember if I've mentioned this before, but Jules, when we purchased him, we thought he was 5, and he ended up being 2 when we purchased him. And when he ended up as mine, he was about 3.5. So I went from a almost 6-year-old horse to a 3-year-old horse, which was frankly a relief because he knew nothing.
Well, he went from being like he's kind of a young 6 to wow, he's a very mature 3.5.
He's a very good 3.5-year-old. And shortly after I learned he was 3.5 was when I did the Lindsay clinic last year. And it was amazing. It was so cool. And being able to communicate with him, especially since, I mean, he came to us as like maybe 15 3 hands, and I think he's pushing 17 at this point.
I didn't realize he was that small.
Yeah, no, he was quite little when he came. Like, not little, he was always stocky, but yeah, no, I would have been shocked if he was 16 hands when we brought him home. He has grown a lot. So having a very large baby horse, being able to speak horse was huge for us. And he was clearly an oopsie, like clearly happened in someone's backyard. Who knows what's in him? And he's not quite built right anywhere. So the posture stuff with Savannah has been huge. Like, one of the first things that we noticed was kind of always holds his tail like off to the right side. That's a little strange. And if you stand up on a mounting block and like look at his spine, you can see the back of it just curves off to the side right at the bottom. And you're like, well, that's not quite right. So we are doing a lot of pillar work and just being straight and calm and consistent. And I think that I have a like radically different relationship with him than I've had with any other horse, which is so nice. And it's very cool. And I feel like when we get to the point where I can safely ride, like where he's comfortable and I can get on, like, it's going to be a different experience. And I trust him to communicate with me well enough that, like, there was one day my mom and my 4-year-old brother came to visit, and it was incredibly windy, but Jules was like, nah, I'm here. I'm good, and I'm here. And I was like, okay. And so we put my little brother up on him because he's 30 pounds soaking wet. Like, the horse didn't even notice he was up there. And it was fine. And it was great. And Jules was like, well, this is a little weird, but you haven't steered me wrong so far. I don't know if I would have had that with, like, Maverick even. It's a different experience.
Yeah, well,
at that age.
I think that, like, that story takes us back to how do we interpret the horse's behavior? And I think I got on Jules a couple weeks ago because you'd been riding him and feeling pretty unconfident on him. And I got on and sat on him and went around a couple times and got off and said, you're nervous because you should be. Because this horse is
so validating.
Right, this horse is like really unbalanced underneath you, and he's feeling anxious because he can barely balance himself, let alone also you. And you're feeling nervous because you're feeling that he's nervous. And it's
for a very real reason.
We should reassess. And so I think that is a really different way of assessing those problems, which is similar to what we've experienced with Annie, where it's like Annie's being naughty, and yes, there's an element, she's saying some pretty big no's, and then the question is why, and how can we help her find yes, which is the whole point of Lindsay's, create a yes horse, is how do we help her find yes. And in order to get to yes, we've really looked into kind of this posture on the ground concept of how do we build the horse up in the groundwork to have the top line and the comfort and the balance to be able to say yes.
I think it's cool to see, like, sometimes it's not always something's wrong. Sometimes it's just like, are you sure that you can do this? Yes, I'm sure. Like, sometimes, like, the no is are you sure about this? Like, you don't seem 100% confident that we can do this. And I think it's been cool to see, like, especially with Savannah, that, like, her work can seem like sometimes like, oh, you're never going to get there. But, like, she's also done some, like, super cool stuff with, like, some super cool horses. And just, like, again, it's like you're looking at, like, one small bit of, like, the massive picture. And, like, the horses can move so much better.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see, like, when we actually get to the spot where, like, we're actually going out and showing, like, how much of a difference it's going to make.
Yeah.
Because she's going to be so much better just in general. Like, she's also kind of a weird, like, we don't know what she is.
Yeah.
She kind of, it's just, like, her own little pony thing. And I think her balance has improved so much. Like, her trot is, like, so much more in rhythm and in balance than it was when I got her. And, like, it went from, like, head up like a giraffe, like, backdrop to, like, the head down, the back up, and it's super cool to see how, like, even, like, the way you lift your reins, like, how they can, like, be like, oh, okay, and, like, release off of that, which is super cool.
Yeah. Very cool.
It's very cool. There's lots of cool learning. Thank you for coming and talking about it.
Thank you for inviting
It
me.
was very fun. And we will be back later. Thanks for joining us this week at the Horse Girl Gazetteer. You can find us online at Horse Girl Gazetteer on Facebook or Instagram, and Horse Girl Gazette on TikTok and Patreon. You can also email us questions or comments at horsegirlgazetteer@gmail.com. Georgia can be found at LOL_itsGeorgie on Instagram, and Kate can be found at Hideaway Acres on Facebook and at Hideaway Acres Horse Farm on Instagram. If you find yourself enjoying our content, please leave us a review and share the link with your friends to help them find their way to us. We appreciate any and all support. Talk to you later.